I don't think I've played this game since 1998. We wanted everything about the interface. We wanted had like no interface, so everything was literal. Nothing was like a metaphor. Because you know, in a normal interface, the cursor is a metaphor for like your attention point, what you're looking at, and the highlight of a cursor is kind of like a metaphor for this is interesting. And your inventory, your verbs when they come up are a metaphor for what you're thinking about doing to that object. And we want everything to be just literal. So like when you're walking around, instead of highlighting things in the room, he actually looks at the thing when that came up. And we thought we were so clever for thinking of that because there wasn't a lot of that in games at the time. Like 3D games were not a big thing yet. And so head tracking, even though all games head track now, like head tracking is really, really common now. It was not that common back then. But anyway, we thought we were totally geniuses for coming. Maybe we were geniuses. But we thought that was really cool. No, I think having so much time go by has allowed me to have a lot of time away from the game. And so it's very fresh to me. Like I have not spent a lot of time with those characters in that game. It's been 15 years. I was talking to a friend of mine who had spent her summer up in Alaska with all these bikers, and she was telling me these stories about being in this bar with Big Rick and Smilin' Phil and the things they would do, and it just sounded so, you know, out of the normal daily experience of most people. Yet people were kind of familiar with it, kind of like pirates and cowboys. They kind of are familiar with the genre of bikers, and so they could relate to it. But it was still bigger than life, and it would be an unusual experience. When Full Throttle was over, it was a big hit, and the studio wanted to make a sequel to it. They're like, let's do a sequel. And I was like, now I really want to make this game about the Day of the Dead. There were stories about how when you died, in Mexican folklore, you would be buried with a bag of gold on your chest, and then another bag of gold hidden in the coffin that you were buried in, so that when you went into the afterworld, the spirits wouldn't, steal the bag of gold, to be hidden in your coffin. As if this is the idea that you had to worry about thieves in the afterlife was so interesting to me, that you think those problems would be gone, you're dead, you wouldn't have to worry about that anymore. But crime in the afterlife just seems so intriguing. And I was also really getting into film noir. At times watching every film noir movie I could get my hand on, and going to film festivals and reading Raymond Chandler novels. And it was lucky that Full Throttle was a big hit, because it was kind of a weird game to pitch. I want to do this game entirely comprised of dead people, and I wanted to do that for years. And after Full Throttle was done, I guess because that game was a hit, I had a little bit of clout that I could make this crazy, weird game. And I was able to get Grim Fandango launched. As soon as we brought these two crazy elements together, film noir and Mexican folklore, it was like one of those things that just sparked idea after idea after idea. And just whenever you hit something like that, it's so rare. Sometimes you're just brainstorming, you're just like pulling teeth to have an idea of like, how are we gonna, puzzles or rooms or locations or characters. It's such hard work sometimes to come up with ideas to fill in the framework of this thing you're making. But with Grim, it was like a fire hose. Like we couldn't turn off. It was just such a explosion of ideas and creativity on that project. It was really fun. It was a lot of people we've been working with before. The lead artist, Pete Sakel, he had been an important person on Full Throttle, and he was setting a high bar for the standards of the project. And Peter Chan, who had been working with us for a long time, and he was just this amazing, both creatively and also just the amount of work he produced. He just made drawing after drawing. It was all creative ideas, and he really pushed everybody and inspired everybody to just really push ourselves to do stuff that no one had ever seen before.
Grim is my favorite adventure game that I've ever worked on. Let me show you guys something. These are my family photo albums of when Tim and Pete Sakel came to visit and used to do work jams on the island with me. And those are all the storyboards for Grim Fandango. And here's me drawing. I don't remember, but Tim swears that I was drawing so fast I was shooting the little ball tips out.
It was the first time I had ever worked in 3D, and so we were coming up with, putting together our first 3D art and animation team. And then bringing together like Peter McConnell and his amazing music Years before, he had once, we were working at Day of the Tentacle, I think, and we were talking about dream projects. I remember he said, you know, the one thing we've never really done is like a noir jazz score. I would just always really love to do that. That's one thing that sat in the back of my head, and I was like, aha, now we're finally getting a chance to do that. And I think, you know, whenever you're getting a chance to do someone's dream project, they always kind of throw themselves into it.
What I did to sort of envelop the game musically was go to the classic film score model, Max Steiner, John Williams. This is the main title to Casablanca. It's a copy of the main title to Casablanca. It was a score that I studied to work on Grimm. You know, there in something like Grim Fandango, there are sort of recognizable worlds with sort of little plums of, you know, this is sort of Central American city with a noir, you know, an Art Deco vibe to it, and this is a dock like in the Maltese Falcon. This is the bell that I used for the harbor sounds in Grim Fandango. Grim Fandango was definitely, you know, one of my favorite projects back in the Lucas days.
And he really just threw himself into that, and he did, I think, one of the greatest soundtracks ever.
When you're working on a new game right now, I mean, what is it you're trying to do? I mean, better graphics, better sound, better interface. What's the sort of holy grail of gamers?
Every game, we try to do more and more just a real story, a complicated story with a real human involvement. Like the new game I'm working on now, I try to do a story with just many more characters and that spans a long period of time for the characters' lives. It was a really challenging project. It was very ambitious. It was like a year late. A year and a half. I remember it took 3 years. Had a big crunch mode. It was back when crunch mode was a lot more, like now we really try hard not to have crunch mode, but at the time we're like, let's do it. Let's just work around the clock all the time. And I was working there, I would start writing like at 9 o'clock at night and just write until 3 o'clock in the morning. I would listen to like loud, heavy metal music in my office just to stay awake. You know, you go home, you go to bed, just when you lay down to go to bed, you hear the garbage trucks coming in the morning. You're like, oh, people are just waking up and I'm just trying to go to sleep. This is terrible. The team, like, by the end of it, didn't get along very well. Probably shouldn't have mentioned that. It was just so, we were just all working too hard. And, yeah, we're just working everyone too hard. But it was an exciting time because we felt like we were making something special. We really felt like we were making something really crazy looking because we just stopped, and every once in a while we would stop and take a look at the screen, and it'd be the skeleton with an orange face and like a Russian hat on, wearing a guard's uniform, standing in a sewer next to a Big Daddy Roth hot rod and a white alligator. And we'd be like, what is this thing we're making? This is insane. This is a crazy thing that no one has ever seen before. And yeah, we got to do whatever we wanted. And I think the management of LucasArts thought it was coming along really, they really liked it. And they really thought it was, you know, being done really well, and they were proud of it. At the time, it wasn't perceived as doing, you know, selling very well, although it met its internal numbers, you know. It was, you know, it made a profit because I got a royalty check for it, so it did make a profit. But I think in the industry, I remember it was used as evidence of why no one should make adventure games anymore. But it won a lot of awards. I won Game of the Year from GameSpot. That was awesome.
Tim Schafer on my right, game designer for over 10 years. He worked for LucasArts Entertainment, where he designed Grim Fandango.
And so I decided to start my own company. And that's when I left and started Double Fine. We started the company in 2000. Yeah, and started working on this game, kicking around ideas for Psychonauts. Oh, what's that doing there? I feel like I own Grim Fandango and Throttle in every possible way except for legally and technically.
And it's like I went to Disney and I'm like, you guys, come on. You know, there's not gonna be many strategic plans around this. They're very valuable to us, so we can make them even more valuable to you if we do something together on these. And they were very receptive to that. So that's where we are. It looks like Grimm's gonna happen, and we're gonna re-release a remastered kind of version of it, so, with Sony. So Tim and I met with Disney and Sony, and we're agreed on terms for Grim Fandango, so, yeah.
And it happened. I couldn't believe we're actually here talking about it. I'm excited that people might actually see the game after hearing about it for so long. It was in print for a while, and then out of print, and probably not reprinted, and then it disappeared. And in the days of, you know, disc-based games, that was it. And then you just couldn't get it again. You know, it's not like a digital game now where it can just stay online forever. It just vanished. You just couldn't find it. And it was so hard with those old disc-based games to keep them running. So it quickly became unplayable. It wouldn't boot. People would have to, like fans, basically fans keep these things alive and support them for years. So it was really only the hard work of the fans that kept people able to play that game for years. But not just keeping them alive and playable, they're actually improving them. They made HD versions of the game. They made a point-and-click version of the interface, fix for some of the bugs in the game. They found some temporary programmer art that I was promised would never be found by my lead programmer. They did a lot of stuff to make the old game run better and play better. And so it's really the grace of the fans that keeps these things running. I would like to interface with the post-release community for Grim Fandango to utilize some of their enhancements. And this new version will hopefully take as much as we can of all that good stuff that's been done to Grim over the last 15 years and put it together. Because this, you know, we fought hard to get the right to be the ones to re-release this. And now we have to live up to that. You know what I mean? Because this could have been done by someone else. And we have to prove that we were the ones to handle this correctly. So I don't want to take it for granted that I should get to do this because it was my game, but we know how to do this, you know, this new edition of it correctly.
We have some great news for you and the fans. After 15 years, Double Fine, in tandem with our third-party production team, will be remastering your classic adventure game, Grim Fandango.
I was really nervous going down to LA for the announcement because I was like, you know, those big platform-specific press conferences are so big and loud, and the stadiums are huge, and the games are always like, arrow through the neck, stab, and explosions, and these big blah things. I hate thinking about an adventure game being stuck in the middle of that because adventure games are so paced so slowly. It's hard to imagine them kind of competing with all that noise. And then they announced it, and we had all Peter Chan's art all over the boards, and it was beautiful, and then everyone cheered, and it was such relief. And glad that people were really interested in seeing it. Playing it again. We had the Sony conference. We made our Grim announcement. Zeitgeist was announced, and it was very exciting, and everyone cheered. You could see that we got a really great response from the people there.
It made me feel good. Like, you know, I care about the preservation of this game. It was cool to see that other people do too. Prior to that, we were, you know, doing all of the planning that we could do in terms of like talking about the approach that we would take and trying to get all our ducks in a row about like, you know, what kind of features we'd want to add and what it would mean to remaster it and all that kind of stuff. We're incorporating point-and-click controls, which I was really skeptical of. Like, I didn't know how the game would hold up, but we got in touch with Toby, who did a mod of Grim Fandango, to add point-and-click controls to Residual.
The fans have really allowed this game to live on beyond the release, and they've put a lot of hard work into the game. And it's really quality stuff, too. And so, you know, where we've found the opportunity to reach out to some of these fans and hopefully to get them involved, and it allows us to do things that were maybe outside the scope of what we originally had planned to do.
So I've looked a little bit at what you did and how you annotated each.
Oh God, everyone looked at my horrible source code.
Just a bit. But I was curious about some of the things you just touched on with regards to like when you tell Manny to walk to a specific region, but the point where you define the hotspot and he needs to walk to actually trigger the camera transition isn't even on camera at the current time? Like, did you author specific points for him to walk to on the walk planes?
And he's been gracious enough to help us integrate that work that he did into our remastering. So
We're still in a kind of
research mode now, where we're trying to find, doing the kind of archaeology we need to do to like dig up and find all the source material we can before we know entirely what's possible. And so we'll hopefully be able to figure that out soon and make some announcements more detailed later, but we don't have any specifics to announce right now. But it'll look better. I'll say that. It's going to look better.
But we'll see what they're able to sort of dig up from the archives.
What if we don't get the source assets?
Trying to clean up dithering is like trying to clean up JPEG artifacting, and it's kind of hard. I mean, maybe you could remove some stuff, but it gets really tricky.
Yeah, so let's start by just showing off the game that we have so far.
All right. Well, here is the first time, perhaps, for many of you to see Grim Fandango running on the PS4. We've been hard at work, and let's launch it.
Our focus at this point in development is primarily on getting the game ported to as many different platforms as possible. And we're also preserving the ability to run the game using the original assets and rendering techniques and stuff. So we're working on getting the classic software renderer that the game uses up and running on all of our target platforms.
Yeah, you can see that this is really old and compressed using a super low resolution codec, which is something that we're hoping to fix in the remaster. And here we are in Manny's office with DualShock 4 controls.
So you actually smoothed out some of the collision for the character movement too?
Yeah, so the old joystick controls that shipped in the original game weren't really up to snuff for modern standards, so we've done some improvements.
We want to improve everything we can about how the characters look and are rendered. We don't want to really crack into reauthoring anything, because we want it to be done with respect to how the original artist made it. You know, Peter Chan's storyboards were authored to be a certain aspect ratio. And so I really want to keep it to that aspect ratio, but just have it look as good as we can make it look, which I think Wes Anderson has made that cool again, right?
I personally feel like Grim Fandango coming out on the PlayStation 4 is kind of like getting a Blu-ray copy of Casablanca or something like that, right? And it's like you want the work to be as well presented and as well mastered as possible for this new higher quality format, but you want the work to be the work.
So what can we expect from the new renderer?
Well, it's going to be running at 1080p. All of the 3D models are going to look a lot nicer. Per pixel lighting, potentially some additional post-process effects. Because right now we're working off the original game files, which of course were really small and compressed for systems of their time. It still kind of depends on whether or not we get those original assets.
But we actually have, this has everything that the archives had on it. So this little solid-state hard drive has, I think the images were, it was probably 130 discs, like CD images. This little hard drive has everything that Lucas still had in storage for Grim Fandango. Yeah, it's exciting to dig through all of this stuff just because I care a lot about the game and I know a lot about the game, but I mostly know a lot about the end product that finally shipped. And so being able to dig through all the source materials and get some insight into the development is obviously a pretty awesome position to be in. So if we just look at the compressed original cutscene, you can see there's a lot of, fidelity issues and just the quality of these lines here. There are a lot of artifacts from the video compression, and there's all this color banding in the sections here. This is a 16-bit color cutscene, and so anytime there's a nice smooth gradient, you're going to lose a lot of that detail, and it's going to kind of wash out. But then if we look at video exported from the original renders, the colors are better, the lines are crisper. There's none of that banding that we were seeing earlier. The whole thing is just, it reads a lot more clean and is, exactly what the artist was looking at when they originally exported this cutscene. It looks a ton nicer, doesn't it? Yeah. But yeah, this is really promising because what this means is that we have basically everything that we need for sure to remaster all of the cutscenes in the game, which makes it as one of the places where the game is most obviously sort of dated by the technology of the era. And so being able to up-res that and make those come through really cleanly is going to be really nice and help bring it in line with the improvements that we're making to the real-time render. Yeah, there's a lot of exciting stuff in here.
Grim Fandango, 15 years later. How does it feel being on stage talking about this game?
It's unbelievable. It's awesome.
I've been waiting for this day. It's hyped for a long time.
Can I just ask the crowd, how many people in this audience have actually played the original Grim Fandango? Very cool.
Wait, are you going to ask the other question?
You go ahead.
How many people have never played Grim Fandango in your life? I'd love to see that too. Oh, great. See? We're counting on both of you to make this work, to tell you the truth.
You know, we're knee-deep in production on Remastered, and I was wondering how it's going with the team at Double Fine.
The game is running currently on the PS4, the PC, and the Vita, and it's looking great. We're doing a whole new renderer for the game, and so you'll see it in kind of a modern look, but you know, still retaining the original game as much as possible.
This is Manny, and here in Maya. These are the original meshes and the textures. And one of the things that we're doing is we're hoping to up-res all the textures. This is the original head down here. So it was originally, you know, this big, and you can see how it doesn't look so great. And then I did this first texture, and I recreated it at 2048. So we'll just be able to, you know, replace that with this. Some of them these are pretty straightforward. Some of them are tricky. So this is a shoe, and I think yeah, some of these textures are quite dark. So here's the original one. Of course, we've increased the size. I mean, we're increasing the size about 16-fold, I think, from the original textures. So you see something like this, and sometimes, you know, there's a certain style to things that was intentional, right? Like probably their choice to make this square was intentional because it was playing off the angularity of the models, like the foot's like a wedge. And obviously they're not doing a lot of subtle gradients because their palette was limited and the models were simple. But some of this is just repalletization garbage. And the trick is knowing what is what and then figuring out where to take it. And having worked on games in the same era as this, I remember a lot of these artifacts. And so I don't feel like that's intentional, right? So one of the things we do is we just clean that up and make that a solid fill. Just trying to basically clean it up and remove what I believe to be artifacting without changing the stylistic intent of the game. Something I would really like to get done would be to make sure that the lighting system on the characters, the new real-time lighting system, is better than the original one. So I think the characters often don't have much sense of directional lighting on them, even though the environments heavily do because they're based in film noir lighting, right? So I'd love to fix that because that looks bad. Those are the things that make the biggest visual difference by far.
When I came on board, like the thing I talked to Lee about is like, okay, what do you need? And he said like, we need an interactive way of like creating new light sources or changing them or like deleting light sources. And so that's the kind of pipeline I worked on. And you know, as you can see, if I toggle between the old school, the original rendering and the new one, even though this is my really crazy programmer lighting, you can already see it like looks way more interesting because you have shadows now, like he actually casts shadows on himself, as you can see here, right? And you just get a bit more depth out of it. And that's really important, and you can obviously move the light source around to get like immediate feedback on how that would look. And you can create new light sources and see right away how that would look like in the game, and that, you know, makes a huge difference for the artist, and then they can just tweak those values, like walk them around at different locations, see how the lighting looks there, and maybe make some changes.
It's really nice. I'm really enjoying it. I mean, the tools are, it's really cool to be able to just do it and watch it like hot reload, and it's like instant satisfaction. And I mean, this is like, if you're gonna light a game, this is the game to light, right? It's got the greatest lighting ever, so, and a great mood and everything. So it's been a lot of fun. I mean, there are a lot of sets though to light. I think there's like 130 or something individual sets. So it's a lot of work, but it feels really good when you see the blinds from this angle and then you walk over here, and if you look at the original game, I mean, there's a huge difference there. I think it looks pretty amazing. And it's cool that he casts shadows on like the tables and the walls and stuff. I don't think he did that in the original. Let's see. No, he doesn't even have shadows over there. There he goes. Wow, that's weird. They must have cut out sort of a shadow alpha in the original that just matches up perfectly with the lights. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess there is the thought of, you know, are we going to alienate the diehard fans by redoing this? I don't think so. I think anyone that loves this game is going to just love it even more. And we're not changing anything. And that would be crazy, I think, to go in and try to change stuff, because we're diehard fans of this game, you know. So
the thing is, it's really hard, right? I mean, working on heritage games is really, really hard because you have to make certain artistic decisions or decisions that some people interpret as like, this is not pure enough for us, or other people say, oh, you didn't go far enough. Like, it's like all this entire gamut of different opinions that are there. And people feel very strongly about it too, because those are games they love from their childhood, right? They don't want that to be spoiled or ruined and stuff like that. And that's, of course, totally understandable. We're making pretty good progress, I would say, in the project overall. We have a kind of rough ship date now, I guess. It's early next year. I think it's good, and Victor is working on the commentary and stuff like that, and it's all pretty exciting to see all those things like coming together.
The commentary stuff went really well. We had, it was like 5 different groups. Each group was a different discipline that we had come in into recording.
We had so many weird technical problems with this game because there was nothing else like it.
Yeah.
And we're cobbling together, really good bits of technology, but nobody had put all these things together before. And it was a huge amount of work.
Huge pain in the ass.
It was a huge pain in the ass. But then you see lines like this, and it's like every time you just want to take your computer and throw it out the window because you're up against some wall or something, and you look at the content or like the big wall of Peter Chan art or that kind of stuff, and you're like, nah, I'm going to turn around and go back and keep working on it.
Luckily, the development team didn't go too far from San Francisco when they left LucasArts, so it was easy for us to be able to get everybody back together in the recording studio all at once. And people seemed to remember a lot of stuff about the game as well, so it made it was a really nice, candid conversation about how the development went, some of the challenges that they experienced along the way, little fun facts about the game, that sort of stuff. So it went really well, actually.
Can I move this mic, or is it over here because you don't want this to happen? How about now? I still remember writing a big justification about tank controls when I was pitching this. I was thinking tank controls I thought were superior to point and click at the time, because when you're pointing and clicking, you're distant from the screen, and the screen is this other thing that you're interacting with at your fingertips.
Right.
But when you're doing tank controls, you feel like you are in the center of the character.
Right.
And the world is rotating. The world's rotating around you. And so when you think, instead of going, I want to go on the left of the screen or I want to go to the right of the screen, you're saying, I want to look at the thing to the left of me and the thing to the right of me.
Mm-hmm.
And now I don't know if that was necessarily the right decision, but it's a good piece of evidence that you can sometimes make a really good argument for the wrong decision, and that's something to watch out for in life. It's mostly it's just funny how you see something like that you haven't seen in years and you remember exactly the day you put it together. Just like seeing a certain scene that you worked on a lot, you're like, oh God, I remember that day. I put that all together, and it just feels so like it was just yesterday. But you haven't thought about it for 15 years. I mean, I have a whole new perspective on the game, having not played it for years, just on the dialogue and listening to things that I still write the same way and things that I don't write the same way anymore. This part of the game, I always feel like my writing has changed a lot since this. Like I was really trying to write good dialogue here, which to me at the time meant a lot of like puns and like wordplay. Like this suit is just this deck of cards is a lot like me. It's ragged around the edges, but I've got more suits. And I forget what it is, but it's like everything had to be this kind of like bon mot.
Well, that's kind of Chandler-esque too. I mean,
But I think I ease off on it in Act 2. I think I just start writing or in Year 2. There's a lot more just normal talking, which I think I kind of like a little bit more now. Sorry, I'm rewriting the game in my head.
Yeah, I'm trying not to rewrite the music.
So Peter McConnell, we were able to recover all of the different music sessions that were originally created for the game.
I think the audio is uncompressed, but I think Peter McConnell wishes we could add live recordings to it, which would be amazing because he used a lot of, even though we did live musicians for a lot of it, there's some stuff that is patches, and he hates his old patches and he wants to redo it.
Here again. What a strange part I wrote.
And that's probably what I should be doing all those solos, huh?
Yeah.
In the sax solo, what do you think about going to just like a straight muted thing with chicks? Like,
yeah,
it'll be a little more like
definitely. It's too much
period, and then start.
But
or
not,
I mean, just like
not funky, but like that.
Just the backbeats.
Oh.
And holding off, and then when the trumpet solo starts, kind of open it up a little more. And then come back in big with the band.
Sounds good to me.
Just kind of give it some shape.
Yeah, there was no guitar part there before, and we're finding it. Yeah.
Nice.
It's practically bebop, you know. It's
when that's
really
sitting in the right spot, it's great.
And then for all the really key moments of the game, we're going to Melbourne, and we're going to be having the symphony in Melbourne record a live session of the orchestra playing these music pieces. It's going to be amazing. It's something that we worked with the same group for the first act of Broken Age, and they did an amazing job. So we were able to get the same group together to help us with Grim Fandango.
Now that we know the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra, like it'd be amazing to actually go down there and.
Yeah, it was just such a wonderful game, and the story was great, and the puzzles were sort of spot on, and the really great thing about the score and that is that it was just another character within the game. And I think it's one of those great examples of, whether it's in film music or anything else, where I'm not convinced the game would have been as successful as it was if it wasn't for that amazing score that accompanied everything. And yeah, it's just such an amazing situation where we can actually record that scored live with a full orchestra, all of those timbres and sounds and textures and everything that a full orchestra can bring. We can actually bring that to this HD remake, which is really, really exciting.
People do react to that because they hear humans playing human instruments, and it is part of the game experience that these people are going to immerse themselves in. When video games were starting to being made and started to translate from a big machine that you could only go to in a physical parlour to something that you could put on your home PC, creativity was amazing because there was no kind of understood base for what things were. It was a fresh field, it was a blue sky, it was any of these things going on. People had to create, and I thought it was wonderful that I can live in a time where I've seen those begin, and now we're going back and we're recooking them.
But look, the project is exciting because it's like a heritage game, isn't it? You know, it's like a historically informed musical performance practice in terms of this game that's now 20 years old. So look, it's fascinating, and I think to be already kind of, in a sense, going back and looking at the history of video games, it's hard to believe, you know, history. I mean, they didn't exist when I started reading comics, but, you know, it's fascinating, really. And if it draws in a whole new generation of people to this very unusual and quite captivating world that's created in Grim Fandango, then it's all good as far as I'm concerned.